Councilman Rotello, Councilwoman Diggs, Councilman Chianese, Councilwoman Teicholz, Councilman Kern. We have Mayor Boughton, David St. Clair, Director of Finance. We have Wayne Shepherd, Administrative Assistant to the Mayor. We have Les Pinter. Paul, I did get you, didn't I?
Yes, thanks.
I'm just making sure I didn't miss anybody. And we have State Senator Michael McLachlan with us as well, and members of the public. Mayor Boughton, I thought that I would give you the opportunity to, Doctor, since this is sort of your request to the council, petitioner, I'll give you the opportunity to start.
Okay, well, first, let me just apologize. I had a city center downtown council meeting that, of course, ran a little bit late, so I apologize for holding everybody up, and I appreciate your patience. We're here tonight to discuss the position of Director of Economic Development. Just to give you a little bit of background on the position in general. In 2004 and 05 budget, I created the Office of Economic Development. Prior to that, the city didn't have an economic development director. The function was done primarily by the mayor with assistance from the administrative assistant. And you know, the mayor does play a significant role in being the chief cheerleader for the city, and even with the office plays a significant role in economic development. In my administration, when I took office in 2001, that function was handled by Mike McLachlan in my office, who did the economic development work, and I did the rest of the administrative work. Mike also oversaw the staff within the office, and et cetera. When we created the office in 04 and 05, I think that's the budget year, I'm pretty sure, with Jim Bolano as our first director, those functions that Mike McLachlan was doing were moved downstairs in the office to Jim Bolano. He then held the position, I'm going to guess about a year, maybe a little bit longer. And then Wayne Shepherd accepted the position and took the position from there. And here we are today. At the State of the City speech this year, I announced that I was going to be merging, I was going to be reducing the position to 15 hours per week, and that I would be merging some of the functions from the administrative assistant's position down with the Office of Economic Development and the director. I appointed Wayne as the administrative assistant. He was the previous economic development director, confusing, and then Mike, who was the administrative assistant, moved down to the director of economic development. And the reason for this move was, there are many reasons, but first and foremost, we're blessed to have two fantastic employees in Wayne and Mike. And frankly, if the staff wasn't as strong, we probably couldn't develop the system. And in fact, if either one of them left, you may have to increase the position to a full-time and restructure again to accommodate a different set of skills. But knowing that we're going to go into a budget year that's going to be incredibly difficult, it's going to be the most difficult one that this council's ever dealt with, and knowing that we need to maximize and create efficiencies wherever we see, it made sense to me to give those duties to somebody who had already done them, which is Mike, to reduce the position, to save on salary and benefits, and to keep some of the economic development function with Wayne because he had been doing it and doing such a good job for us. So I took two positions and really merged them and made them 1.5 positions, in your mind, if that's the way you could kind of phrase it. The total cost of savings for the city for the next fiscal year would be $67,000. That number is arrived by the reduction of salary in the salary line on the account, and the deletion of healthcare benefits and dental benefits, and that's about those benefits are around $26,000 a year alone. In addition to that, Mike does not qualify for a pension, nor could he qualify for a pension, because our pension ordinances say that you have to have a minimum, I think it was 22 or 23 hours a week, even if you're part-time to ever qualify. So this time won't build up towards his pension at the time that he built up in the mayor's office. So on that side, from a financial standpoint, it was a win. And the second piece is well, what about operation? How are you going to cover the same duties, the same amount of work with having sort of only less of a person? And that's where Wayne comes in. And that's where Ted Kasumpis comes in. So what I did is I took some of Mike's old duties and gave them to Ted and said, Ted, you're now going to handle the council agenda. So the mayor's office, along with department heads, put, you see the items that come through on the council agenda. Those are all vetted before they actually show up and get delivered to you guys. Those are all reviewed by my office. So Ted does that now. Mike used to do that. Boards and commissions. We have dozens of boards and commissions with dozens of members. That used to be a function that Mike would do. Ted is now doing that. That includes vacancies, recommendations for appointment, vetting, as well as tracking the terms to make sure that we have the appropriate terms of office in that. Outreach to the community. Ted's at the City Center Board meeting right now. That would be a function where Mike would be at. So by shifting some of the duties that Mike had over to Ted, that freed up Wayne to have a little more time to devote to things like the Special Olympics, the Connecticut Film Festival, the Nutmeg Games, and those particular functions that he'd already been doing downstairs. So then that leaves the balance of the work to be done by Mike, and specifically that result that is revolves around economic outreach, economic development, retainage, in other words, keeping companies that may be interested in going somewhere else here with us, as well as doing that first entree when somebody walks in and says, hey, I want to move my business to Danbury, or I'm thinking about leaving, what can you guys do for me? And just as an aside, typically, and I think Wayne will agree with this, is that when that happens, the economic development director can only take it so far before the person says, I want to talk to the mayor. That's just what happens. I mean, that's part of where then I step in, and we say we sort of, that's where I actually close the deal, if you will, and say, okay, I think we can do this. And oftentimes there are items that come into the economic development office that are vetted, that kind of don't make sense. The person may not really be able to execute the plan they're presenting, never makes it up to my office. But more often than not, when something you guys see on your agenda, it's already gone through my office, and I've already met with the individuals that are there. In addition to that, I just want to go over a couple of issues that have been raised, and without casting any disparaging remarks or anything like that. There was some discussion about the 15 hours. Well, somebody said, well, how do we know Mike is working 15 hours? Well, he only gets paid for the hours that he works. So if he only works 10 hours, he only gets paid for 10 hours. But he doesn't get paid for more than 15 hours. Although we know that Mike's a workaholic, and we know that he's going to be here for 60 hours, because that's how he was as administrative assistant. He was here night and day. He was usually the last, about the middle one in, but always the last one out of the building. And so you don't automatically get a 15-hour check each week. Well, how do you track that? Well, under the section of the charter related to administrative assistant, Mike will be reporting to Wayne, filling out a timesheet just like all of the part-time employees do. This is hours I worked this week, and he'll be paid for the hours that he works. The question was raised to me, well, what about legislative duties? Well, I can tell you that as a member of the legislature, there's about 3 weeks that really count up there. And those 3 weeks are the last 3 weeks in this year, in the budget year. And beyond that, there's a public hearing, there's a committee meeting. But I taught school as a member of the faculty at Danbury High School, and was there every day, and still made my committee meetings, and was paid $58,000 a year to do that. So you can easily balance 15 hours a week in your work in the legislature. Remember, we have a part-time legislature for a reason. And that's because other people have jobs. Everybody has a job that's up there. This move is, in my recommendation, is not unprecedented. There have been other people that have been state representatives and, or I don't know about senators, but state representatives, and have worked for the city at the same time. Including my father, who was a state rep and worked in the water department, and later on, Lou Wallace was an administrator in the water department and was state representative. So that issue has, that has not unprecedented, and that issue has been raised, and I just want to be clear that it's not like it's something that hasn't been done, and there's precedence there. Some people said, well, the issue of, $41 seems like a lot of money for that job, and let me just tell you how I arrived at that figure. I took Wayne's salary next year, divided it into an hourly rate, and came up with $40.32, and I rounded it up to 41 bucks, because we're not paying benefits on the position. So that's where I came up with the $41 per hour. In addition to that, there have been some other issues raised about there's a potential conflict of interest. Let me just tell you that Mike took it upon his own to get both he got an oral opinion from both the state ethics panel and our local ethics panel, and then followed up with a request for a written opinion, so that it was clear that there wouldn't be any potential conflict in what he was doing. So that was all done by him. Nobody filed a complaint. Mike went in long before I announced, or prior to me announcing that he was going to do this. We were clear that there would not be any ethical conflict. In addition, he consulted an attorney as well to review the statutes and make sure that there wasn't going to be a problem with this. So I feel very comfortable in having Mike do this job. He's incredibly talented. Again, this is based on the skills that we have now. In the future, if Mike were to leave and to get a full-time job somewhere, and by the way, I just want to say that my father and Lou were both full-time employees with full-time benefits. But in the future, if Mike were to leave, we may have to look at moving that position back to full-time, because we might not have somebody that has the same skill sets and somebody who knows the city the way Mike does. And it just may be too much. The other issue is, in this economic time, and I just want to share this with you, we can't really afford somebody in there that requires a learning curve. We just don't have the time for that. And to take somebody off the street, even with a requisite experience, to learn Danbury, to understand our process, to understand our incentives and tools that we have in our toolbox to attract business, would take probably a year. We'd pay a full-time salary, and we'd have to pay benefits on top of that. And so here we are trying to save money for the city, be more efficient, and utilize the skills that these two gentlemen provide for us. And I think we're lucky and blessed to have both of them in terms of being able to help the city out. And I think in the long run, it's going to be proven that it was a good decision. So with that, that's kind of the big picture, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Simheimer, did you want to add anything? Do you want to add to this?
When the mayor asked me to take a look at it, I mean, the numbers just make sense. We have an incredibly tight budget year coming up, and I'm on round 3 of beating up the departments, of turning in numbers that we can present together, and I tell you, it's tough. It's tough. We're looking at everything possible to save money and to be able to provide the services that the city of Danbury expects. And you have an opportunity here. You've got two incredibly talented people, and you can save money at the same time. So, from a financial perspective, you can't go wrong.
Thank you. Mr. Pinter, from a legal standpoint.
Mr. Chairman, thanks. The only thing I would have to say to add to what the mayor says is that in order to provide the maximum independence early on with this issue, we didn't file any formal opinion out of our office. The appropriates that, what Senator McLachlan did was appropriately again was to obtain 2 independent opinions, one from the state official regarding that for sure potential conflict, and secondly to obtain an opinion from the local Board of Ethics. And according to the Code of Ordinances, the Board of Ethics is in place to do just that, to provide an advisory opinion to an official or other employee who requests one. And I felt that those 2 were very important to obtain even before we would even take a look at anything, although obviously, I'm familiar with the ordinances and the charter. However, I didn't weigh in with a formal opinion, but I did review everything, and then I was interested to see what came out. I did end up reviewing both of those opinions and concur with the opinions that were provided both to and through the Board of Ethics. So on the conflict of interest issue, we were comfortable that those opinions provided were accurate and properly done. The only other thing I would say personally is I've worked next to Mike for 2 years. He's a decent and honorable person, and the idea of semi-combining these offices certainly makes practical sense, and from a legal standpoint, there's little that I could see throughout the whole process that would be problematic for you as the council or the city as a whole.
And let me just say, Mr. Chairman, that the Ethics Commission has a separate lawyer. She's our outside conflicts person, Sharon Dornfeld, who also reviews these opinions and helps craft them. She is there specifically as she's a member, she's an active Democrat, it's no secret, and I respect her and I respect her opinions. And she's involved locally here, and she signed off on the opinion, and certainly you can call her and discuss it with her if you like. And you know, her job is to make sure that we don't have conflicts within the city.
I think what I'm going to do at this time is I'm going to open it up to questions from committee members first, and then I'll open it up to ex officio members after that. Mr. Attorney?
Thank you, Mr. Ferguson. To the mayor here, when, if approved, when would this go into effect?
Well, Mike right now is working on an interim basis. In fact, we did the triple team. It was Wayne, myself, and Mike on one local company already, and Mike today and I had another meeting with another company related to retention and recruitment. So he's acting as interim right now, and then formally appointed in March. He would just take the formal
Councilman.
appointment.
Wayne, both, are you guys comfortable with this arrangement?
Well, unlike everybody else, I got a big problem with this. Because if you want to follow him, have him in that chair for 7 years, it's impossible. I mean, I'm genuinely, I say this with sincerity, his knowledge base of everything has just been phenomenal. And I'm going to look like the weak link in this. I am. But genuinely, I think what I like the best is the flexibility. Because he can call me and we interact multiple times a day. And I know he's working way beyond the 15. We do interact a lot, and it works very well for the customer. So as I look at a customer, which is any business that would contact the Economic Development Office, the Mayor's office, whatever, the Mayor said it earlier, there's always been an interchangeable part there, because in the past 3 years that I've been here, we've interacted numerous times on businesses, and okay, I'll go talk to them, you talk to them second. It's worked very, very well.
You guys do that very well, by the way. Now I knew what you were doing.
It's really genuinely a benefit to the city as I see it, and certainly to me right now, great to have him available.
Michael?
Thank you. Wayne and I have a very good working relationship, and have since his arrival here. Because of my historical perspective in the job as Chief of Staff to the Mayor, and having participated in a lot of economic development discussions, we were always sort of tag teaming communications with potential clients and existing people in the community. And so I'm very comfortable with the relationship, and I think that we'll do very well as we go forward. If we just use the last several days as an example, we had numerous communications after hours and over the weekend about two particular clients that we're dealing with, and I can see that good communication continuing.
All right. The other thing that I just want to put out there right now is the fact that being on the council for these number of years that I have, and working with Michael and also Wayne, I've known Wayne for 30 years, I think now. I like the combination of the two of them working together, and moreover, given the economic times we're having right now, the savings of $67,000 is paramount as far as I'm concerned. So I like the whole thing, and that's all I have to say at this point.
Mr. Esposito?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Certainly, it's during this economic times, the savings of $67,000 some odd dollars is a credit to this administration. However, the concern to most people, to myself, is the scenario: could it really gel? Are these two people? We don't question the ability, certainly, of these gentlemen, but the idea of the scenario seems to be kind of far-fetched for a novice like myself to comprehend. But after listening to the mayor and Michael and Wayne, it seems that they're very confident that this scenario, so to speak, would work. And the more I hear, the more satisfied that I'm getting. However, some of the concerns probably go around the table here before the evening is out. Again, the concern is, will it work? Again, not questioning the people involved, but it's such a complex thing that we want to know for sure that it will work. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, if I may add, one of the things that, we can do and we will do is provide, as Wayne has been doing, monthly status updates to the council as part of the economic development report, listing the contacts made, the discussions. Some of the discussions can be very, folks don't want everything out in the public, whether they're thinking about moving or they're thinking about coming here, so they're confidential, but there can at least be a recording that that meeting took place, and here's what happened, much as Wayne has been doing. But the Nutmeg Games, the Special Olympics Film Festival, those activity center things will be run out of Wayne's office upstairs. So that we'll have to figure out a way to report that out to you, because I know Wayne's been doing some stuff on the film festival in particular. But we have just provided a report.
This time I'd like to open the floor up to the ex officio members of the council if they have any questions. Mrs. Diggs?
Through the chair, last week we had a chief of staff and now we have an administrative assistant. When I think of administrative assistant, I think of a clerk typist. I'm sorry. I just wouldn't want to go from a chief of staff down to administrative assistant. That's just my own personal opinion. So how did you, Mark, how did you come up with that title?
Well, it's actually the technical title in the charter. It says administrative assistant, and that goes back to 1977.
I don't know, Wayne. Are you turned off with that term?
It doesn't bother me a bit. I'm happy to come to work, and
As long as you get paid?
that's it. I don't want to do the volunteer stuff anymore. Genuinely, it doesn't bother me. I mean, there's a job to be done, we know what it is, and
Well, personally, I don't like the title.
Well, we're going to change that to chief of staff, I think, right? I mean, that was.
Well, we set it back,
Yeah,
whatever they come up with, yeah.
I mean, Michael used the term chief of staff through you, Mr. Chairman, and it seemed to.
in the past, some days you're a glorified secretary, understand that, and I'm okay with that, because I've proven to everybody I'm the best typist in the place.
But I'm really just thinking about your overall credentials, honestly. And the administrative assistant, it's like a clerk typist, in all honesty.
Okay.
Anybody else? Specials?
I was also thinking that besides the $67,000 benefit that we'll be getting from the savings if Mike gets the 15 hours, also I'd be concerned about the businesses that are already like in the hopper looking at the city and looking at coming here, and with the economy the way it is, to bring a new person on board would kind of be concerning to me. It would be better to have someone who's kind of up to speed and the companies are comfortable with the businesses coming into the area. I don't know, it's just something that was on my mind, thinking it's good to have that continuity right now.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ortello.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to speak on Councilwoman Diggs' comment, the mayor brought up last night that the chief of staff is not actually the chief of staff. He's really like the co-mayor or the mayor's assistant or something like that. So we sent this back to the Charter Revision Commission to come
Wait a
up
minute,
with.
you didn't tell me that.
We sent it back to the Charter Revision Commission to come up with a name that doesn't indicate that the position actually runs the staff, but is more than a glorified secretary. So we'll see what they come up with. My concern here has nothing to do with the principals at all. It has to do with something that happened in November when one of the guys here was elected to a position where he will be representing 4 communities, and we will be competing with 3 of those. One would be Danbury, the other would be Bethel, New Fairfield, and Sherman. So my concern becomes having a director of economic development who should be hopefully steering the development to Danbury, when at the same time he will be representing 3 other communities that might want some of that development too. And if I was in that position, I wouldn't quite know what to do with my constituents when I got a call from the town committee in New Fairfield and said, hey, we want that school, or we want that bus depot, or we want the whatever, the magnet school, or the new public works department in New Fairfield, and I get a call from the mayor of Danbury who wants it, and the first selectman in Sherman, who I wouldn't know where to go with that. That would be hard enough, but to be actually getting paid from one of those towns to be steering development to that town, I would find to be a conflict of interest. So that's my issue. It has nothing to do with with Mike. I've known Mike for years. He's a hard worker. He's one of the hardest workers in the Danbury system. Wayne's a great guy. I've known him too. They would both be fine in these positions. The problem is that elected conflict of interest that I see. And it is, let's face it, New Fairfield is not, with all due respect to New Fairfield, they are not looking for a lot of development. The mayor and I have talked about the sewer thing. It's a complicated issue, but they were offered money to hook up the sewer system in Danbury, and they turned it down because they were afraid by doing that it would lead to more development. They don't want development. I don't consider this to be a deal breaker. It's not something, for instance, if it was New Milford, that would be a problem. We are really fighting with New Milford over development. But other communities like Reading and, you know, places like that, East and West, and it's not that much of a big deal. And the same thing probably goes for New Fairfield. Bethel, on the other hand, with the Francis J. Clark Industrial Park, that might be a little bit more competitive. So that needs to be answered to my satisfaction. That's the only thing I've got. Thanks.
Just so the committee's aware, I spoke personally to Bob Burke, first selectman of Bethel. He has no problem with this arrangement, very comfortable with it. I spoke personally with John Hodge, first selectman of New Fairfield. He has no problem. I have not spoken to Andrew O'Connor from Sherman, but we don't often compete with Sherman for economic development. I can't envision a situation where we would butt up against them. And I would also say that's really a problem for Bethel or New Fairfield more than for Danbury. Mike's loyalty to Danbury, he's a Danbury guy. I mean, that's indisputable. And I would say the other, issue is that as a legislator, he runs into that dilemma every time he sits down at his desk in the Senate. He may have a bill that's good for Danbury that has nothing to do with economic development. It's just a good bill for Danbury, not such a good bill for Bethel. And I'd run into that with all of our legislators that cross multi-jurisdictions. Jason Bartlett, I think, is a pretty effective legislator, and we joke all the time about that, but sometimes he gets a small town issue for Reading that bumps up against Danbury. And, you have to make that decision as a member of the legislature. And so that kind of decision process happens all the time. But I did personally speak with those folks, and if they had said, look, I got a major problem with this, I would have gone back to Mike and said, this is going to be an issue that has to get resolved. And both those first selectmen said that they had no problem with it. And they applauded Mike and thought he's going to do a great job.
Let's go with Wayne first.
Can I just add, I've been sat in that seat for 3 years, and never once have I heard Fairfield or Sherman mentioned.
Right.
Ever. Okay. Bethel, I helped one move from Bethel to Danbury, but that was.
It's actually, I think, more of state projects, though. That was
Yeah.
my issue. Mike would be involved with the state projects.
From the true businesses movement.
Yeah. Well, clearly. But Bethel, maybe.
Once.
Yeah.
Doesn't happen often. Usually they're looking at either come to Danbury or North Carolina. Danbury or New York State. Danbury or Michigan. But you're not getting Danbury and New Fairfield.
Thanks.
Mr. Steinmeier?
Strictly speaking, from a selfish standpoint, selfish in terms of the city of Danbury, I've had several conversations with our newly elected senator, and it's nice to be able to go to see him, to talk about what's going on with the state. How are we making out in the state? Can you put a plug in for us? We really need to keep our funds intact, or we're hurting over here. Can you help us out there? And he gives us the inside line. It's just nice to have that right across the hall for me. And I hope that continues, quite frankly. And there's so many reasons why this works, and it works well. Everybody knows that the economy is in a tough shape right now. There's not a lot of businesses rushing in, so we're from a strategic standpoint, you're positioning yourself to gear up when it does happen again. It just makes sense. We're saving money now when we need to save money, and we're positioning
position ourselves for the future when the time comes. And we have a direct line. And I tell you, we need that.
I think I tried to work out last night.
Hopefully,
Yeah, you won't have to say.
Mr. Chairman?
But, I mean, it's one thing to pick up the phone, which I know I could do whether he's here or not, but it's another thing to sit down, and on a daily basis, face to face, to talk to him, because you always got that.
Thank you. I think one of the things that I would say, and it's probably more responsive to Mr. Rotell's concern, is that I think that by having Wayne still involved in economic development, I think if there something were to come up that would be construed as a conflict to Mike, he certainly can just pass it off to Wayne and let Wayne carry the ball and just take that forward. I would have to say that I've known Mike for a lot of years, and I don't think there's a person better suited for that job. I don't know if there's anybody in here that loves Danbury more than him. And it shows in his actions, and it shows in what he's done and tried to accomplish. So I'm good with this. So, are there any other questions, Mr. Cheney?
Thank you. Through the chair, I've got a couple of questions. I'm going to first start with Wayne here. When you were economic development director, your hours were 40 hours a week.
35.
35. So, given your time when you were economic development, what did you do for 35 hours a week? Break it down.
Actually, I have the list.
Okay, good. Good.
But put down hours. I mean, how many hours on the phone? How many hours out physically outside the
I
building?
think that changed every week.
I mean, how many hours in the building? I mean,
I would tell you.
downtime.
I would tell you that changed every week, dependent upon season, dependent upon individual projects that came before me, dependent upon the event marketing that we were doing, depending upon workload at the Workforce Investment Board. I don't know that I could give you one week's.
But what you're saying, it's still
actual-
a 35-hour-a-week job today.
I think in this working environment, if you're gonna cut down to 15 hours, this is the perfect time because they're not knocking on the door every day, businesses to come in. I think about 3 years ago when I took over, I was getting a constant knocking on the door to say, hey, can you talk to me, talk to me, talk to me. It has become more proactive. You have to go out and try to find things. But the reality is right now, there's not a lot of businesses.
Just to, again, I just want to help get some leeway. Just to follow up on that question, just the flip side now. Michael is still chief of staff. You're still the development person. What you're saying is that your hours should no longer be a 35-hour job. It should be cut down to 20 hours a week now. So in theory, then what you're saying is your position is no longer a 35-hour-a-week job.
No, I think, Mr. Chairman, what we're saying is that there are duties that Wayne is still going to do that make it possible somebody can do it in 15 hours. If Wayne wasn't going to do any of those duties, then you could say yes. If they were flip-flop, like you're saying, then it would only be a 20-hour-a-week job. That's not what's happening. Wayne is just keeping some of his duties as economic development director that took up 18 or 20 hours of his time.
Because of what he described with Ted.
Because Ted is taking some of Mike's old duties.
But still, the job of economic development is no longer 35 hours.
No, absolutely not.
It's 25 hours.
No, absolutely not, Mr. Chairman.
I mean, that's what I'm trying to get an understanding of the office in itself. Even though you're splitting there's more hands in the pie now.
Right.
But
Is
as
there
far as
are you
the
asking for the
workload,
workload? Certainly there's workload. I mean, I was on 13 different, thank you for this, I wrote that, didn't I? I was on 13 different boards or commissions. Those alone, just going to the meetings, coming back, and the action steps that you take off of those, it takes your time. I mean, how much time is spent out at the meetings, how much time is back here? I would say maybe 60% of the time I was out of the office. 40%, that's a guess, but again, I have to say it went in waves. If you get caught up with a certain thing, a certain committee requires work. The events that we talked about, the film festival, those things wind up being more out of the office.
But again, for title of economic development, its mission is to, what's its main mission, to bring in businesses and, or just bringing in events?
And
it seems-
retain
new business, correct. But it seems like over the last year and a half, it seems like the focus of the office has been more bringing in events, like the film festival, and that seems like took a lot more of your time. So on the flip side, the business end of it, something had to suffer. Did you feel that was occurring?
I wouldn't say that, no. I think the timing was very, very good in that regard, and I think the events right now too are also, once you do them the first year, second year is a lot easier. And in the case of the Nutmeg Games, it's only a 2-year contract. You know, the Special Olympics is going to be a 2-year contract, but that's a pretty easy one. So, no.
So what I'm trying to get out of here, do we really need those 15 hours? I mean,
Yeah.
I think, Mr. Chief,
Yes.
maybe I can shed a little light on it too. From what I'm hearing from Mr. Shepherd and Mr. McLachlan is, although maybe years ago when the economy was different, people were coming in here, streaming in, talking about coming to Danbury. And now that that's not happening, now the opportunity for us is that we have to go out and start knocking on other people's doors and start making those opportunities happen with those same hours. It's not that it's not as easy happening coming in here, flowing in. We have to go out and work at it.
A lot of it's communication with businesses, with the Chamber of Commerce, with City Center, with the Workforce Investment Board. You know, the Main Street Renaissance Task Force has become very active right now. That takes time. All of those wind up being things you have to spend time on. And can you spend that much time or that much time? Yeah, either way. Okay, but can you completely get rid of that job? No way. Not and serve the city right away.
but can the 15 hours that we're allocating to develop office now efficient to accommodate those tasks? Or are we saying that 15 should be more of a 25-hour week?
I think it's the 15 in conjunction with the hours that Mr. Shepherd's going to be spending is going to make the combination
But
of
something
the hours.
has, I mean, something has to still give. Something,
Yeah.
there's still only 40 hours in a work week. Something has to give.
Right, and Ben, the job, the duties that Mike had as chief of staff have been transferred to Ted Kasumpis. So that's the give that you're referring to.
Okay.
So that's about 15 to 20 hours of the work that Teddy's now doing that Mike used to do.
So now, okay, again, now we take back to Ted's position now. So his 40 hours now is being taken up with 2 more tasks. So was Ted's position not a full 35-hour week position, where he has more time to where he can get more, to do more duties? I mean, you can only do so much in a day.
Right.
Without working more overtime,
Right.
without extending more hours.
And if you go to my first week when I was going to strangle the mayor, because if you remember we had a power outage and snowstorms, and I went 14 hours, 12 hours, 12 hours, 11 hours, and they said, wait a minute, did I sign up for that? And there's going to be other weeks, I would think and hope, that they're going to be more into the regular normal work shift. And I was the same way in economic development. You didn't have a regular week. There were weeks that I could get done in 15 hours, okay? You could. There were other weeks that it was 70, just based on different companies you were talking with. Conducting CEO forums that we did for the mayor. Going out and interacting with the chamber. It depended, going out and making the proactive visits to all the businesses on Main Street. Because his first marching orders were to me to get to meet all of the business owners, okay, as many as I could, on Main Street and the large companies, but proactively go out to them and visit them. Because rather than have them come to us complaining, which you're always going to get somebody come complaining as well.
I
So-
would just want to add, Mr. Chairman, that
Mike works a lot of hours, he's a hard worker, which makes me lead to the next question. What constitutes a working hour? What, I mean, a phone call from home, would that count? Or would it have to be physically in the building, swipe in with a time card? I mean, what will constitute that 15 work hour? Because I know he's going to want to
All of
working
the above.
25, 30 hours.
Yeah.
But that leads to labor laws. I mean, if someone's working 40 hours a week and not getting paid for 40 hours a week, someone's going to start saying what's going on. So would that lead us down the road that we would have to pay, well, regardless whether it's only budgeted for 15 hours, but the person's actually doing 25, this is more of a legal question, 25 to 30 hours a week. I mean, granted, someone's going to say, wait a minute. I mean, I don't know if the unions will step in and say, wait a minute. You know, he should be paid what he's entitled for the work he does. and that's because he's volunteering those hours on a different level. I think I mean, how does that come into play when he's physically, which I know he'll probably end up doing, working for the city on doing city business beyond the 15 hours and not getting paid for it?
That's a decision that Mr. McLachlan makes, though, Ben. He can't come back and bill us for hours that he's not authorized to work for.
I understand.
Okay, all right. Well, there's no legal
that.
issue there. Michael, are you gonna run around and say I worked 20 hours this week and I want to get paid for 20 hours? No. Is it a union issue? It's a non-union position. So, I mean, I'm sort of at a loss, Mr. Chairman, that, you know, anyways, the point is that, you know, everybody in this room works more hours than they get paid for. And if you look at the amount of time that I put into my job, which I'm proud to do, I love being mayor and I enjoy what I do, and I do it for the sheer joy, you know, you can turn around and say that I should get paid for the 70-hour work week. Dave St. Hilaire here is every night late. Mike is here, Wayne's here all the time. Les is here every Saturday and every Friday. I mean, it's just natural for a professional to put in not just a minimum, but put the maximum in there. We shouldn't want to penalize people for it.
No, I'm not trying to penalize, I just want to make sure that we, as I say, again, is covered, that we don't get in trouble for somebody physically doing probably a great job doing something that he's getting for. I don't know what the labor law is. Is there something where the labor laws will come in to say, well, we're doing more than what he's getting paid for?
It won't arise in this case. This is Mr. McLachlan's proposed position is an exempt professional at-will position. So it will never reach the level of a kicker for the labor laws with respect to overtime. It's just not that kind of position.
So now we're positioned exempt from that law?
It will not reach that threshold.
Mr. Kern?
Well, the only thing, we're beating hours to death here. I think I'm probably the only one in this room.
To the mayor, not being a member of the committee, but the council will have to vote on this recommendation in the end. Is the vote, or is the charge of the committee to approve a reorganization or of the mayor's office with regard to shifting these duties, as well as to recommend the appointment of Mr. McLachlan to the position of Economic Development Director? And the reason I ask is because, in all candor, and not to shed legislative authority or powers here, that is it ultimately the mayor's decision is how he structures his internal staff and shifts hours around. We can't dictate that. The council can't dictate that. Maybe by charter we could, if the charter was changed. Or through the purse strings, through money. But not the way you would shift around your internal office. And if this is approved, and exactly what Mr. Curran said, is based on the individuals that are here, they work together well, gel together well, have experience that overlaps and cross-pollinates well. However, are we approving this as a reorganization and as a position going forward, notwithstanding the individuals, or is this a very limited review for this specific situation? That's what I'm trying to understand.
It's a limited review for this specific situation. As I say, I got a full-time job working for a bank or just whatever. Then I'd probably come back and say, let's say we do the budget in May, we fund it at halftime. I may come back and say, look, I don't have that individual anymore. To do the same workload and fill that learning curve and to attract a quality individual like Mike or Wayne, I need to have a full-time position there. And I'd come back for another appropriation, not a contingency or something like that. Your vote would simply be on the appointment. Les and I looked carefully at how the budget was crafted, and it's sort of unclear, is this an office, you know, to be frank with you, is this an office that works under the aegis of the mayor, or is it a department created by the council? So I took the more conservative route and brought it to the council, you know, and said, look, we should talk about this, we should have transparency here, if people have questions, they should have an answer. That's why I'm here. So.
Just wondering, since ultimately, really, from the standpoint of the council voting on it, it's sort of an opinion or, you know, a stamp of approval of what the reorganization would be. It's not any way binding on the mayor.
And then I just want to emphasize again, I could come back.
Subject to change.
Right, in August, again, if Mike were to leave, or you know, we have to make some adjustments and say, look, I got to expand this back to full time. You know, we're not going to find another individual that can work like that.
My opinion is that this really is, it's the mayor's prerogative to appoint these positions, to structure the office the way he wishes to structure them. And that it really ultimately, and maybe from a more liberal view of this, it's really an opinion of the council as opposed to a requirement of approval. But that being said, as the mayor said, he's presented it as an opportunity to answer questions and to express at least our opinions. And with that, Mike is a very good organizer. I worked with him with the Special Olympics, actually kind of worked for him as a volunteer with the Special Olympics. There is a cost savings here, and several of the questions that myself and some council members have put to the mayor's office have been answered tonight. The structuring of the monies, the accountability of the hours. My assumption initially was it's a 15-hour quasi-salary. You're paid by the hour, but you're going to get a minimum of 15 hours pay. Actual hours works or actual hours paid for. That addresses a concern in a timesheet.
Up to 15.
Up to 15. I understand that. I don't have the concerns labor laws. I understand that situation there. And the opinion that was sought by Senator McLachlan, I think is well drafted, well reasoned, and states why this is not an actual conflict under our charter or ordinances, and that there's no inherent conflict with a municipal employee being employed or being an elected official. So I agree with that. Where I have concerns, and I think Mr. Rotella began those initially, is the issue of potential, as we discussed, not to beat a dead horse, the potential competing economic interests between municipalities that the senator represents with his well, for lack of a better word, Danbury hat on as a state senator. I think some of the other situations, just a municipal employee being elected is not an inherent conflict. And I'm not saying that there is a legal conflict here. It is more the issue of a conflict with regard to the job description that an economic development director has. And I think Mr. Shepard or somebody said that, or the chairman said, if there is a potential conflict there, it would be shifted potentially over to Mr. Shepard. That raises some of the very concerns that I still have. And some of the things that actually make it attractive to have an elected official as your economic development director when they represent multiple towns, some of the very same things that raise some concerns in my mind. I understand we're probably not going to compete with New Fairfield and Sherman based on their economic development policies. But Mr. Shepard actually said, and correct me if I'm wrong, that one of the things you did do was there was actually a business under your tutelage or your tenure that moved from Bethel to Danbury.
Yeah, he had already come. I didn't bring him here.
Okay.
He had come, he had issues when he got here, so I immediately went.
Okay. No, I mean, those still are, the last issue here was still my main concern in this. And again, I think it's more opinion of the council, and you know, we have every right to express our opinions here. I certainly hope that there'd be adjustments made going forward. I do think that, and not to spend more money, but that a full-time economic development director without shifting and having multiple hands, and we're doing it at the state level too, people taking on other responsibilities, in the end is probably not the best way to go. So I don't have a vote on this, but I still have some of those concerns. I'll express them on the council floor as a whole.
Mr. Seabury? Yes, sir. At this point, I'd like to make a motion. I move to recommend the council as a whole to approve the appointment of Michael McLachlan to the position of Director of Economic Development for the City of Danbury.
Motion's been made.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I reiterated my remarks to begin with, I feel comfortable with the explanation that I've heard tonight, and I would second that motion to recommend Mr. McLachlan's appointment as the Director of Economic Development.
Thank you, Mr. Esposito. Under discussion with the committee? Seeing none, I'll try your minds. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, the ayes have it. Unanimous. Seeing no further business, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for your patience and your time and coming tonight.